great business video about the British Premier League soccer.
On February 3rd,
how England's football league is breaking the sport. I kind of like sports business. Let's try it out.
2023 in London, the English football club, Chelsea, played a home game against a rival, Fulham.
Okay.
The game ended in a scoreless draw, but Fulham's fans were so excited they stayed to chant.
This is such a classic American take on soccer, but come on, bro. Everyone gets out there and screams and gets excited, and the fucking score is 0-0. A riveting 0-0 tie. It's ridiculous. That means it was good. You don't need points to have fun. You do. I'm gonna be bold again and say you do. You need at least 1 point to have fun, because a tie is boring. It makes the anticipation all the better. No, okay, there's anticipation for what? The game's over. You go home. You went out there and you watched for 2 hours and nobody won.
After the game. Soon, these words were in articles all over the world because in just 1 month, Chelsea had spent 329 million euros on new players, more money than all the clubs in the French, Italian, German, and Spanish football league spent combined.
You have a club like Chelsea.
Okay, I can kind of see why it'd be funny. I can kind of see. Wait, I just want to say, if I showed up and one team had spent hundreds of millions more on their players than the other team, and it was still 0-0, I can see why that would be funny. I can see why I'd be entertained as a fan of the underdog. Like, hey, you guys can't get a fucking goal. It's almost like it's fun for them because they didn't lose. I see that. I see. Okay, I'm coming around.
Chelsea, and they think they can do everything. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of money.
But it's what Chelsea's owners believed it needed to do in order to succeed in the most competitive, most popular, and richest football league in the world, the English Premier League.
The English Premier League, these sums of money are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
The problem is that the Premier League's clubs have grown so rich that the rest of Europe can't keep up.
It's very difficult to be competitive against English clubs. It is so far ahead of all the other leagues. The gap seems to be widening.
So how did the English Premier League get so rich? And how is...
Are all the best soccer players going to the EPL? Because the money's so good, right? So no. Used to be, and not anymore. So there's multiple leagues. These are all different leagues, right? There's like a ton of soccer leagues. I guess, well, Messi plays in America now, right? Dude, I have a guy, friend of a friend's lawyer. Okay. But he bought 8 season tickets for the team that Messi is on before Messi was announced to have joined it. And those tickets went up in price like $20K per Inter Miami. Yeah. And so now he like sold just the tickets for the first game where Messi played and made like 6 figures or something ridiculous, and is set. Like, he's set for fucking all the money he spent and more. And I was like, that's fucking crazy. Who pays that much for soccer? I guess Messi's first game was like extreme demand. Like, it was all rich people buying it.
That a problem for Europe's favorite sport? I need to start by explaining how football works in Europe.
Oh. Is he going to explain everything I just asked? These fucking video makers, dude, I swear to God. It's like, leave some gaps for the poor reactors, dude. Leave some gaps for the hardest working people in the business, reactors, who have to pause and ask questions, and they don't need you explaining it right after. It's insane. These guys should be arrested.
Starting in England around the 1860s, people began organizing official football clubs and playing each other. Eventually, they divided these clubs into a tiered system. The worst clubs played down in these leagues and the best up here.
Okay.
But clubs could move within this system. At the end of each season, the bottom 2 clubs in a league would be demoted to the league below, a punishment called relegation. But the top clubs would be promoted up.
It puts a competitive edge to everything.
This is James Corbett, a senior reporter at Off Pitch.
You know, effectively, you could have a village club that might be in tier 10 of English football, and if you do the right things, you know, they could be playing in the first division within a decade. You do have those fairy tale stories.
Wimbledon, 6th in the first division in their first season in the top flight.
On the verge of a football fairy tale.
By the mid-20th century, these 5 leagues in the biggest 5 countries had most of the best players, and therefore the best clubs. But every year, the best club from every league would play each other in a big tournament, at first called the European Cup. It was an opportunity for clubs in any country to win big. In the 1980s, clubs from 16 different country leagues reached the semifinals, and in that period, a Portuguese, Dutch, and even a Romanian club won.
He started again! He's unbeatable, and Romanians have won the European Cup!
But football was about to change, and it began in England with a tragedy.
Okay.
On April 15, 1989, 700 people were injured and 96 killed at a game in Sheffield.
There was one piece of beans on toast at the top, and there. I'm sorry, I shouldn't joke on tragedy. I have a tough time when it's British people. You know, it's tough to get the empathy that I need.
Poor crowd control and stadium design led to a stampede.
I'm
It
sorry.
was the low
I'm
point for
sorry.
English football after a disastrous
I'm
decade.
sorry.
English stadiums were falling apart, and attendance at matches was plummeting. And English clubs were banned from European tournaments after a fight between fans killed 39 in 1985.
Well, English football was a game in decline. You had rioting, you had hooliganism,
It was in
you had
decline?
racism. It was like an epicenter for all of society's ill.
Thank God there's no more rioting, hooligans, or racism in English football nowadays. I'm so glad we got past that. Huge, huge progress. 1990 is a thing of the past.
Disputes between clubs and television broadcasters resulted in none of the English top leagues games airing on television during the 85 and 86 season. So many of England's best players fled to play in the other European leagues. By 1990, a few people were desperate to turn things around, specifically the owners of England's 5 richest and most popular clubs.
Arsenal, Tottenham Hotspur, Manchester United, Everton, and Liverpool.
Big clubs wanted a bigger share of broadcast revenues, centralized marketing. You know, they saw the benefit of that in US sports.
Right.
And essentially they saw an opportunity.
In 1992, they led a group of 22 clubs to break off and form a new league called the Premier League.
Oh.
And they designed it to be English football's resurrection.
It's a whole new ballgame.
The Premier League served as the new top league in English football. It controlled its own TV rights, which it sold for 427
Smart.
million euros to a satellite TV company. Cash that the clubs then used to find new ways to make money and modernize the game. They renovated and built new stadiums that could fit more fans, and they started selling sponsorships and merchandise all over the world. But it was satellite TV that made the biggest difference, allowing the games to be broadcast to new audiences like in the US and Asia. The Premier League was able to more than double the price for its rights in 1997, and again in 2001.
It is one of the great success stories in global sport.
Crucially, the Premier
I like that this guy has a book called The Ball is Round. And this is a fucking tome, dude. I mean, there's like 800 pages in this. This is like Harry Potter 4, dude. I don't know what he's reading, but this shit goes deep. It is round, and I want to know why.
Global sport.
Crucially, the Premier League divided its TV revenue relatively equally between clubs, which made them more competitive. Spain, Italy, and Germany all gave more TV money to its most successful clubs, which let a few dominate year after year. By 2004, the Premier League had successfully turned English.
Can I be honest? That is really fucking dumb. If you give some of the clubs a bigger share of the money, those clubs will buy the best players and continue to win. And they'll entrench them at the top of the charts every time. That's a stupid system. That is making whoever had powerful clubs at the start of the thing have powerful clubs forever and have no change. Like the one good thing, actually there's a couple good things about the system that the NFL and the NBA have set up, which is that they all equally, I mean, the annoying thing they do is they have player salary caps so that all of the upside goes to the billionaire owners, not the players that do, or the coaches or everything that has all the real fucking earning power. But the NFL, at least, like, they distribute the funds equally and they use the draft system and everything to make sure it's like basically equitable. Like almost any team can win if they get the right management.
Football around, becoming the wealthiest league in Europe, and some very rich people were noticing.
Okay.
This is Roman Abramovich. He's a Russian businessman who, back in 2003, was worth almost 10 billion euros.
Yeah.
And he wanted to buy a football club.
As you do.
He settled on a West London club named Chelsea, which was in deep financial trouble. He paid around 199 million euros for the club and to relieve its debt, then immediately injected millions more of his own money to buy almost a dozen excellent players from
Okay.
clubs in the Premier League and across Europe.
All right. Went all
Even
out.
while the club lost money, he added more.
That's the big moment because he came in and he had a level of wealth that was just beyond anything that the Premier League had ever seen. before.
Chelsea quickly won the Premier League in 2005 and 2006 and began consistently qualifying for and advancing deep into the all-European
This
tournament.
is so dumb. I mean, it's like sports is just a way for different billionaires to flex on each other. It's just a money spending game. It's pay to win. It's like a loot box. That's so stupid.
Since renamed the Champions League. Abramovich proved that you could buy success in the Premier League. And it encouraged...
he literally went to like a friend's FIFA league and opened more packs. He bought like more gold FIFA packs and got a better team and then just beat you despite practicing less. Is that not why salary cap good? In NFL, there's 32 teams, right? And they can't get relegated. They can't get down. When you don't have a salary cap and they all make the same amount of money, they all have basically the same amount to spend. I guess some teams in bigger markets might have more ad dollars. So I got to think about it more. I don't want to make a rush judgment. There could be a rationale to it. The problem with the current system in the NFL now is that some teams are owned by billionaires that don't give a shit about winning at all. And they've actually turned it into a free ride system. Basically, they piggyback on the teams that care and they buy the cheapest players and they cash in and take their huge TV rights money and then spend as little as they can on the staff, on the maintenance, on the team, on the grounds of the arena. There's just some teams that are only in there to siphon cash from the NFL. That the freeloader problem is the problem with the current system. So you have to figure it out. Either you have freeloaders or you have fucking super pay to win. They're both problems. There should be some sort of middle ground. I think the NFL system is better. Baseball has this issue, but worse. IMO with no cost cap. Yeah, perhaps. I mean, again, I think it's fair to say that like some teams are just inherently richer or have billionaire owners that don't care. Or, yeah, I do think there's a rationale for a cost cap. Maybe I should think it through more. What I don't like, though, is that, like, you know, LeBron James, just for an example, is worth more than any team can pay him. Like, he brings in so much value and can only capture a small portion of it because they literally cap it, especially, like, LeBron James more in his prime. It feels unfortunate for these athletes, and they have this small window of earning potential, and they can't earn what they're kind of worth to the team because they're capped. I wish there was a way around that or a better way, but I also agree that pay to win sucks. You're right, poor LeBron, he needs more money. People always say that. They're like, oh, poor LeBron, oh, poor actors, poor whatever. But they never say, like, who gets the money when they don't. And it's never like the common man. It's always a billionaire. So when I'm saying, like, poor LeBron, I'm saying compared to the guy taking all of the money that he's earning. It's not like it's going to you, fucker.
Other owners to try it for themselves. Throughout the 2000s, a new class of wealthy and mostly foreign owners began buying and pumping millions into Premier League clubs. It helped that at first, the Premier League had very few rules on who could buy a club and how much they could spend on it.
Premier League has always been sort of quite non-interventionist. Any investment as good investment.
So these new owners began making the already rich clubs richer, while others boosted some smaller clubs into notoriety.
Like Ted Lasso.
Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan was a member of oil-rich Abu Dhabi's royal family, who in 2008 bought Manchester City.
Yeah, Man City moved it up another notch because you had the resources, not just...
Oil money has flooded into esports in a way. They bought ESL and stuff. But there's never been like a Saudi prince who wanted to really own an esport because the money is so much cheaper. Like for what they spend on one football club, they could buy every single esport team in every game and name them all after themselves and have them all compete. Like they could own everything. The money is so much smaller. And it would be funny to see if just one fucking Saudi prince was really into fucking Rocket League or something. He could literally buy every single player on every single team and just choose who wins.
Wealth, but the resources of a nation state.
He spent over 1.7 billion euros over the next 15 years on the best
Disgusting.
players, coaches, staff, and facilities from all over Europe. And of course, it worked.
Manchester City are the Premier League champions.
This strategy helped spark an arms race in the 2010s. Clubs started spending more and more each year to sign the best players and keep up with each other. While many of the rich clubs could afford to lose money on expensive players, many smaller clubs couldn't.
It created huge inflationary pressure, not just in terms of transfer fees, but in terms of player salaries. And they effectively pulled the rug from under the feet of other clubs.
And it became harder for clubs promoted into the Premier League to afford to stay there.
clubs have massively
Yeah, wasn't there a club that took on like 500 million euros of debt to sign Messi? And then he played like a season or something with them? Am I crazy? Like, he didn't play there very long, and then they're just drowning in debt. They can't even make their payments. Barcelona announces 1.35 billion euro debt following Messi's departure to PSG. Yeah, they took on debt to keep Messi, then he left, and all they had was a bunch of debt. They won a shit ton, yeah, while he was there, but then they didn't actually make enough money to make it back.
Spent trying to get into Premier League.
In 2013, the Premier League adopted rules that were designed to encourage clubs to break even. But they didn't slow down the spending, because these clubs were in a lucrative cycle. As wealthy owners spent millions to bring the best players to the Premier League, more fans, especially international ones, wanted to watch it, which generated more TV money, which gave clubs more money to spend on more players.
That's sick.
By 2022, the Premier League had 11 of the 20 richest football clubs in the world. And as far as revenue, the Premier League clubs brought in over 3 billion euros more than Germany and Spain's top leagues, and more than double France and Italy's.
Infinite
So
money
by 2023, the Premier League was on a spending spree that Europe's other clubs just couldn't match.
Okay,
Something
so they got the
Chelsea
best teams.
made obvious in 2023.
Transfer deadline date, and Chelsea have locked down a British record transfer
Spending of $357 million in January, La Liga president has launched a scathing attack. The British market is a doped market. This can jeopardize the sustainability of European football.
Do you think we're going to see a time when the Premier League's ever equal by any of the leagues?
By 2023, Europe's other leagues generated far less television money than the Premier League, but they also had more rules. Germany blocked ultra-wealthy owners from taking over its clubs, and Spain's league placed strict spending limits on its clubs. It often made these clubs healthier financially, but put most of them at a huge disadvantage when bidding for players against Premier League clubs, like Chelsea.
Yeah, players don't want to go there if they can get
The
more
year
money.
before, new ultra-rich American owners had bought Chelsea, decided to splurge on new players, and were prepared to pay huge prices in order to outbid the other Premier League clubs. It offered 121 million euros for one player from Portugal's league, and 70 million for one in Ukraine's, plus millions more for another 6 players, totaling 329 million euros. That's more money than the annual revenue of most European clubs. So Chelsea got these players, and while its spending was extreme, even the worst Premier League clubs were outbidding Europe's major clubs.
Okay.
Southampton bought 5 players.
So it does look like all the best players are in the Premier League. That's what it feels like, right? Not all. I mean, I got to feel like most of them are because there's way more fucking money in it. Not everyone chases the bag. All right, based, but...
including one from France for 25 million euros. And Bournemouth bought 3 players, including one for nearly 23 million euros from...
It creates a dynamic where Europe clubs know they can overcharge the PL teams. That's funny. Yeah, this guy fucking rules at soccer. Yeah, give me 100 million euros for him. This guy's the best. I swear to God, he's going to crush in your league. He's the best guy in France. I promise.
Ukraine. Essentially, Premier League clubs are buying up nearly all Europe's best players, and these clubs can't afford to stop them.
I know executives at what, by any measure, I would consider big clubs, and say Germany, and they're very, very frustrated because every year they will lose their best players to an English club.
Some already rich and successful clubs in Europe are trying to match the Premier League spending, but it's caused Spain's Barcelona to spiral into a debt crisis, and Italy's Juventus was caught fudging its accounting. Europe's other clubs, meanwhile...
Here's what you need to do. If you're a top German club owner, I'm going to tell you right now, here's what you're going to do. If you find a young upstart talent and you raise him to be one of the greatest players in the world, you need to fake a drug problem. You need to start filming like behind the scenes TikToks and shit, showing this guy doing cocaine, crack, whatever, leak them to the press, make it seem like he's a fucking party animal, make it seem like he's an asshole, talk about how he's a worse teammate. That way, they're not going to want him. You get to keep him on your team. They don't pick him up. He's a risk to the brand. Now you're signing him for below market rate.
Are increasingly choosing to sell their best young players to Premier League clubs, meaning it's harder than ever for them to compete. You can see it happening most clearly.
This kind of happened with, so Cloud9 in esports was one of the best teams that figured this out. Cloud9 Jack figured out that like the real money in esports was not from getting advertisers. Esports teams got all this fucking investor money and then spent it really stupidly. So the real money was taking that stupid investor money from other teams. And so what Jack would do, he would develop talent in the amateur league and he would sell LCS slots. And both those things made him way more of a bag than trying to get like Cheez-Its to sponsor his team. Like that stuff was small fries compared to just getting overpaid players and transfer fees. I think Cloud9 was one of the few teams to make money out of that whole fucking overspending era because they kept their costs relatively low. They didn't crush, but they made money on player signings.
In the Champions League tournament. Remember back in the 80s when clubs from 16 different countries made semifinals? In the past 10 years, it was just 6. And only these 6 clubs have won it. Playing in a major Champions League match earns a club millions, so when it's dominated by a handful of rich teams, they get even richer.
It definitely affects the competitive balance. Clubs from less significant European leagues, it is gradually forced them out.
This runaway wealth imbalance is why a few rich clubs, including 6 from the Premier League, tried to break away and form their own Super League back in 2021. An outcry by fans forced them to abandon the plans, but the problem didn't go away.
We talk in terms of European Super Leagues, but the reality is the Premier League is the European Super League.
Right. They've done it! They've done it! Manchester City have done it!
The Premier League has announced that it plans to install stricter rules that limit what clubs can spend on players. And it might be starting to enforce its rules better. In February 2023, the Premier League charged Manchester City with more than 100 violations of its financial rules, stretching back as far as 2009. If found guilty, it could be relegated. But restricting spending could just make permanent the advantage the rich clubs already have. It's the Premier League's past willingness to let anyone own a club harder to fix.
Once you've opened yourself up to a nation state buying into your organisation, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to stop that.
Manchester City completes a historic treble.
And I'm not sure that it can be done.
It's also like, when there's so much money at stake, the financial caps, the way around is what they do is they do like non-financial perks to the players. It's like what they did with college players where they can't technically pay them, but they want to sign the best ones. They give them a house and a car and a bunch of shit under the rug, and then they find them like these above market sponsorship deals and things like, and I think at this level of scale, it would be insane. There's going to be so many weird examples, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just assume the whole thing is corrupt. My assumption is that this level of wealth in the sport, this thing's got to be corrupt as shit top to bottom and just filled with fucking weird gaps, weird loopholes, money laundering. There's just too much at stake. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not a fun soccer game anymore. It's fucking, college players can get paid. Yeah, I know they get. I was talking about back in the day.
Search Party. Hope you liked it. Glad to have you.
I did like it. That was a good video. I learned a lot. Very interesting. As someone who watched NBA and football, Kylian Mbappe's early career reminds me of a young LeBron James. I heard he got a $1.1 billion offer, which is the highest for any athlete ever for one season or 1 year. Killian? I don't know who he is. That's why he wrote it. He rejected it. 700 million salary. How do individual people have tens or hundreds of billions and the whole league only generates 6 billion? I think those numbers scaled up. I think it generates more than that now. I think they said 6 billion in TV fees, bro. So that's 6 billion in just the TV rights package, which is probably higher now. That doesn't include ticket sales or merch or anything else. That's just TV rights. I'm glad he rejected it. Fuck the Saudis trying to sports wash. Yeah, I mean, it's insane. I've heard that PGA LIV golf thing might get blocked. I hope it does. It's insane if they can just buy their way in at that level. It's literally pure money.